When I think about the evolution of the modern NBA to where we are now, to me, it all started with those Phoenix Suns teams.
The 2000s Phoenix Suns changed basketball forever. The Suns hired Mike D'Antoni as an assistant in '02 and promoted him to the head coaching job in the '03-04 season. After spending time coaching in Italy, D'Antoni implemented an offense he created known as the 7 seconds or less, an earlier version of a pace and space game that moved away from isolation and post-ups as the main methods of scoring and used smaller lineups centered around shooting and the creation of space around the pick and roll. The Suns built their system around a core of versatile players who were ahead of their time, including forward Shawn Marion, a large switchable jack-of-all-trades player who was an early model of an elite 3-and-D player. One of the most athletic and talented big men in the game at the time, all-star Amar'e Stoudemire, and then in 2004 made a signing to bring back all-star point guard Steve Nash from Dallas, who had started his career with the Suns. From there, they took off, winning 62 games in the 04-05 season under D'Antoni's system with a core of Nash, Amar'e, Marion, and Joe Johnson surrounded by an amazing cast of role players, including Quentin Richardson and Leandro Barbosa. That team eventually made it to the Western Conference Finals, where they ultimately lost the eventual champs, the San Antonio Spurs. Did I mention Steve Nash won MVP in both that season and the next one? The Suns remained a dominant force throughout the 2000s. They would make another Western Conference Finals run the following season, ultimately losing to Dallas in 6 games. They had another 60-plus win season in 06-07, but ran into the Spurs again in the playoffs. The same thing happened the next year after a 55-win season. Mike D'Antoni left to go coach the Knicks, and the Suns took a tiny dip, but their run was far from over. After missing the playoffs the year before, they made it all the way back to the Western Conference Finals in 2010, where they lost to the eventual champions again in Kobe and the Lakers. But many in the sports media world had predicted that they would not even make the playoffs. Newcomers to the squad played a huge role in their resurgence. Vets like Jason Richardson and Grant Hill, and young guys like Channing Frye, Jared Dudley, Robin Lopez, and Goran Dragic, many of whom don't even remember from those Suns days. After that last run, they transitioned to a new chapter, but it's worth remembering that the 7 seconds or less Suns were ahead of their time and one of the most memorable teams in NBA history that does not have a ring. Maybe even more memorable than some of the teams that do. They were an early version of what the Warriors eventually perfected, and it is no coincidence that Steve Kerr was an executive with the Suns during this run. He and many other NBA coaches have taken pieces of D'Antoni's system and run with it. You can't talk about today's NBA without talking about those Suns teams. And though those teams never got it done in the form of a championship, whether it be because of bad luck, facing better teams, or poor management decisions, or any combination of those things, it is important to remember that they shaped how NBA basketball is played today, and that is meaningful. And that is why